Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning in the States, and welcome to our panel discussion titled Bohemia Illiberalis, Perspectives on Czech Future Democratic Landscape and Foreign Policy After the Elections. My name is Daniel Hegedűs. I work as Regional Director for Central Europe at the German Marshall Fund, and I am warmly welcoming our today panelists, Petra Gasti, Associate Professor of Democratic Theory at Prague's Charles University, Vít Dostál, Executive Director at the Association for International Affairs, AMO, and we hope that our third speaker, Andrea Mihelcová, Director of the Center for Informed Society, will also be able to join us shortly. But Petra, Vítek, thank you for joining us today. The weekend's Czech elections brought many surprises. While the populist ANO party secured a historic mandate with almost 35% of the vote, which represents actually the highest share ever achieved by a single party in Czech elections since 1990. The far-right party, Freedom and Direct Democracy, SPD, underperformed relative to polling and expectations. And in addition, the far-left Stačilo movement, founded by communist and left-wing social democrats and campaigning for Czechia's exit from the European Union and NATO, failed to clear the 5% threshold. Andrej Babiš announced his goal to form a single-party minority government with external support of the radical right parties SPD and Motorist for themselves, but those parties conditioned their support to an official coalition agreement and access to minister posts. In parallel, Czech President Petr Pavel insists that Babiš must resolve his conflict of interest case related to his Agrofert holding before he can assume the post of prime minister, and Pavel also stated that he will not appoint ministers to the government who oppose Czechia's membership in NATO and the European Union. In a nutshell, Czechia might face long, interesting, and highly consequential coalition talks in the coming weeks and months. And I am delighted that we have such fantastic experts to discuss what the most likely outcomes and consequences of those talks related to Czechia's democratic quality and foreign policy positions might be. Regarding the housekeeping rules, we will begin with an approximately 45 minutes long moderated panel discussion, followed by a Q&A session. And you are welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to submit your questions anytime using the Q&A function of Zoom. We will do our best to incorporate your questions into the discussion. And I would like to remind you that the event is recorded and will be available online at the YouTube channels of both GMF and AUTHLIB. Having said that, I would like to mention that actually the panel discussions takes place in the framework of the EU Horizon project AUTHLIB. This acronym stands for Neo-Authoritarianisms in Europe and the Liberal Democratic Response, and the project investigates the sources and implications of the normative divergence from the model of liberal democracy in Europe. And having said that, I would like to turn to you, Petra, actually with a bunch of domestic politics-related questions. First, what are your key takeaways from this election? What domestic dynamics determined actually the outcome, which in some extent are surprising, I think, for most of the observers? What are the most likely coalition or government scenarios now that we know actually the results? And how might these affect actually the democratic quality in Czechia in the future? You have the floor.
Thank you, Danny, for the and German Marshall Fund for the invitation. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and good morning to our friends across the pond. So let me start with 5 takeaways that frame this election, in my opinion. Number 1, Andrej Babiš's comeback. ANO achieved a historic victory. In a proportional system of representation we have in Czech Republic that results, however, in only 8 new additional seats. But what this means is a consolidation of protest and anti-system votes by last-minute moderation. That was Mr. Babiš openly rejecting any discussion about EU and NATO membership or referenda that the extreme parties to his right and to his left demanded. Second, collapse of the traditional left. The communists try to benefit from the widespread protests against inflation, against the energy crisis that the country was plagued by the past 4 years. Quite surprisingly, last minute, they were joined by a part of Social Democrats. However, this project completely failed. This is for both the Communists and Social Democrats a second failure to re-enter the parliament. I'm not ready to say that it's a total and final collapse of the traditional left, but there is no space for what they are offering, and the arguments of representing the silent majority did not materialize themselves. And this is important to say to prepare us for the discussion after, is that in the 2021 election, 1 million votes ended below the threshold. This time it was about the third. So there is no silent majority because Russian bots don't have voting rights so far. Third point, a democratic realignment from below. We have seen voters of non-populist parties use preferential votes on a massive scale. 53 new members of parliament were elected thanks to preferential voting. For the first time, we are going to have 34% women in the Czech parliament, and 2 liberal parliamentary party groups of mayors and pirates are going to be female dominated. We also have 12 MPs under 30 now in the chamber, also for the first time. So this is, let's say, a revolt from below against the party headquarters that have put together the ballots. Fourth, what we are seeing is regional polarization deepened. ANO dominated in poorer post-industrial border regions, while Spolu and its former coalition partners, mayors and pirates, held major cities. The country remains a two-pillar democracy, and the political competition between populist parties and between, let's say, the current coalition parties is happening in separate pillars. And finally, the fifth main takeaway, Babiš's chameleon populism and the coalition dilemma. Mr. Babiš's ability to adapt ideologically makes him electorally unbeatable. This is going to be a main challenge for the democratic parties on the conservative and liberal side of the spectrum, how to win back at least part of the voters. Because in fact, they together, the 5 parties, got the same amount of votes. What allowed them to govern the last time and form the coalition government was the 1 million lost votes I already mentioned. So this is the huge advantage of Mr. Babiš, who has managed to mobilize people who are poorer, from post-industrial, less educated, smaller places, and but it also makes him more dependent on problematic coalition partners. Proportionate representation doesn't yield itself so easily to a single party government. So a paradox to close the introduction: the most successful election for Andrej Babiš, but also a strong sign that Czech democracy still mobilizes against extremes, such as the departure from the European Union, NATO, or regime change. You asked me, Dani, about the election landscapes and results. I think that it is important to say that nobody has worked so hard for this victory as Mr. Babiš himself. This is deservedly his political peak. This is his big comeback after losing in the presidential elections. He campaigned, he toured the country non-stop for 2 years. ANO has gained 8 seats, Spolu has lost 19, while the coalition, as I already mentioned, the 5K coalition won the same number of votes, but it wasn't enough. So same percentage, same number of votes, but the mobilization happened on both sides. The pirates rebounded. Mr. Okamura's extreme right has weakened. We have a newcomer, motorist for themselves. I think we can go into that in discussion, what the agenda is there. And the turnout was 69%, so the highest in 10 years. While in I already mentioned lost votes. Geographically, the map is split. ANO painted the country orange, except for Prague, where Spolu won 1/3, and Pirates and Mayors also dominated. On the contrary, in one of the peripheral regions, Ústecký region, ANO scored 45%. In Prague, it was 20%. So it means you also find people whose living standards have lowered in Prague. So it's not just it's not all liberal. So these results confirm what I would call the geography of inequality. Education, class, and opportunity now determine political behavior in the Czech Republic rather than ideology. So as for the domestic dynamics behind the outcome, we have seen that ANO mobilized voters in municipalities with higher unemployment and low education, the very same places where communists and social democrats once got their votes from. So in 2021, these votes were scattered among smaller parties. Now Mr. Babiš reclaimed and unified them. At the same time, we saw demobilization on the conservative side. In South Moravia, South Bohemia, Catholic and affluent districts simply more stayed at home. Spolu's problem was not the persuasion, but it was the turnout. I already mentioned preferential voting, so I won't go there again. I will just reiterate that I see that as a democratic weapon against the party headquarters, especially mayors kind of tried a participative inclusion of their sympathizers and members into ballot formation and then didn't stick with it. So then people expressed their preferences and then party headquarters did what they did. So completely changed it, and voters kind of said, no, it's going to be our way or the highway. So the electorate, in other words, protested within the democratic system, not against it, while part of conservative voters stayed at home. So now what comes next? Very few know, even with ANO. As for now, Andrej Babiš conducts the first talks from his living room in Průhonice. Andrej Babiš prefers ANO minority government with experts tolerated by SPD and motorists. The most probable outcome is ANO minority government with motorists tolerated by SPD, offering SPD more in terms of, for example, its chairman Tomio Okamura being the president of the parliament, and then also some, let's say, positions in state or partially owned state companies. A formal coalition with SPD would be toxic internationally. Mr. Babiš is very aware of it, but informal cooperation is easy to imagine. And in that lies the democratic risk. Media independence, I think whatever, if this is a formal or informal coalition, the first target is going to be Czech television and Czech radio. This is where all three of these parties agree. This would probably be the first row of assault. Second, I think accountability. SPD and motorists have openly attacked NGOs. I think there lies some misunderstanding, because the majority of state funding for NGOs goes to sport clubs. So I don't think they're trying to defund sport clubs, but this is more, let's say, inefficient translation of the culture wars into Czech Republic. I also think that the public debate could shift from governance to culture wars, especially between very performative and politically inexperienced motorists. This is their first time in parliament. If they directly enter the government, I think this is very likely. Still, Mr. Babiš is ideologically chameleonic, so adaptable. He can present himself as a modern manager in Brussels one week and as a nationalist in Ústí nad Labem the next. This flexibility makes him electorally unbeatable and institutionally dangerous. The problem, however, is not Mr. Babiš alone. It's his partners whose extremism he may normalize by inviting them to join the government. So there is also another reading, a more hopeful one, with which I would like to end, and that is that these elections show that Czech democracy still breathes. High turnout means citizens care, including those from left-behind places. As a Democrats, we must agree that people from left-behind places must have the possibility to express themselves. The rise of women and young candidates means renewal is possible in mainstream parties that has resisted any change for a long time. This is a revolt, as I already reiterated, against the party headquarters. And even under populist winner, institutions have worked, the ballots were counted, and power was changed peacefully. So nobody, aside of Mr. Vrabel, who has won 0.3% of the vote and accused European Union and Mr. Soros for stealing the victory away from him. These are marginal characters. They exist, but they are unattractive to the voters. But the two Czech republics persists, the urban, educated, looking to the west versus rural, insecure and local. Failing to bridge this divide was the greatest failure of Mr. Fiala's government. Without bridging, the legitimacy gap will keep feeding populism of any color because the so-called losers are now mobilized and the so-called winners are dissatisfied. And I would end here for now, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Petra, for this excellent overview, and I am sure we will come back to a couple of very interesting questions you already mentioned. May that be actually political innovations like the emergence of the motorists, or practically events like that this was the first in Czech election history actually with a mail ballot for citizens staying abroad. And I think also from the perspective of other Central and Eastern European countries, the Czech experience now with diaspora voting could be very, very interesting. But before going into those details, I would like to turn to Vitek, because as Petra already mentioned, the far left Stachilo party actually campaigned on the ticket of reconsidering Czechia's membership in NATO and the European Union. They failed to clear the threshold. So obviously, as Petra mentioned, this can also be a reminder that the Czech society is not open for such foreign policy extremities. But I would be very much interested in your insights. What role has actually the question of European integration or collective defense in NATO played actually in this election campaign? And you published back in the summer, actually, a fantastic overview about the potential scenarios at the field of foreign policy. So how government formulation could influence Czech foreign policy and EU policy in the future. So now, with the benefit of the hindsight that we know the election results, I would be also very curious in your insights. What is the EU and foreign policy pathway you think is the most likely that will be followed by Czechia in the coming years? So over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Daniel, for the invitation and to the GMF. And I will focus in my introductory remarks on the foreign policy issues, and will try to answer the questions you introduced, Daniel. So yes, as Petra also mentioned, the Czechs decided not to go into the extremes when it comes also the membership in the EU and NATO. The voice of the radical parties was not as significant as it was expected. Yes, there is a party that asks for the referendum on EU membership, and that will have an influence on the formation of the next government, and that is SPD. On the other hand, the motorists they claim that they do not want to leave the EU. They argue that it would be a suicide for Czechia at the moment. And we've got ANO and Andrej Babiš repeatedly said that he doesn't want to leave EU, neither EU nor NATO, and that it is all that it would be idiotical to do so. So from that point of view, this dilemma between change and continuation in a foreign and security policy, when we look on at how the results, what the results are actually of the elections, then the Czech society opted for some kind of a stability in terms of remaining in the EU and NATO. Though I do not think that for the significant part of the voters of Andrej Babiš, these questions were actually the crucial ones. If the most important motivation for the elections would have been the EU and NATO membership, then they would actually go and vote perhaps in a larger numbers for SPD or Stačilo. Still, it was not the case. I think that it was very much centered on the domestic issues, on the social economic issues, and that is the result what we have thanks to this focus. And actually, also in the campaign, Babiš was kind of upset that everyone asks him about the EU, NATO, or Ukraine, and he wanted to center on the domestic issues, on the domestic policies, and that is something what he repeated all the time. That, well, you know us actually, you know me as the prime minister, and you remember that economically it was more beneficial for you under my rule than with the Petr Fiala's government. So this differentiation he used in the campaign was also centered on the domestic issues, not on a foreign policy agenda. What we also have as a result from that was about the continuity we might expect from after with this result and with Andrej Babiš as the prime minister again. But there will be some change. What we also learned from this result and from the campaign as well is that the next Czech government will be quite anti-green, anti-climate, and I believe that this will be the main clash, the main conflicting area when it comes to the cooperation in the EU. Having said that, we also know that for Andrej Babiš, he follows the money all the time. So the negotiations of the next multi-annual financial framework will be something he will very much focus on. The coordination of European policies will be definitely in his hands. That is something he would like to keep around him. It will be very important to watch, who will be selected as the next EU Sherpa for Andrej Babiš. Andrej Babiš respects the format of the European Council. That is the environment he's familiar with and he likes, and the direct communication with and bilateral communication with the European partners, and not only in Europe but also beyond. What he does not respect and does not believe in is the European Parliament and the European Commission. So he will very much focus on this intergovernmental approach, and that means that at some European councils he might play the role of the troublemaker, of someone who vetoes something. But if there is something like that, where he sees some motivation to block the consensus, in my view, it will be in the area of the climate and green policies and energy, not in the others like the foreign policy. the big question that lied ahead was the future of the Czech support for Ukraine. And here we have a number of issues that where there was some kind of a question mark. The less Czech involvement in the eastern flank. If we have a coalition government, or if we would have a coalition government of ANO with SPD, and or if the Stačilo made it into the chamber, that would be in danger. In the current situation, I do not think that Babiš will limit significantly the Czech involvement on the eastern flank. There is this big question of the defense spending. We got the mixed signals from Babiš. On the one hand, he repeated all the time that there are no money for defense spending in the state budget, and that we cannot go that much up with the defense spending as it was agreed in The Hague in July this year. On the other hand, in his program manifesto, he claims that he wants a bigger army and that he wants to pay the soldiers much better. So we get quite a mixed signals from his program. The Czech participation in the coalition of the willing, that's another issue on the table. The treatment of the Ukrainian refugees, there is a big question mark. It would not be beneficial to treat the Ukrainian refugees badly for Andrej Babiš's companies, definitely, but it might be one of the demands from the far right. Support of the sanctions and the new sanctions, that's there's another question. Then my question would be, what would be the gain for Andrej Babiš from blocking the sanctions? The humanitarian development assistance to Ukraine and the support of reconstruction of Ukraine. Again, some money from the state budget flows into this, not a significant number, but it might be used symbolically by the far right in the negotiations. The question of the opening of the membership negotiations with Ukraine, another issue where there is some potential from the Czech side to block it, though I do not think that Babiš would gain anything from it. Unlike in Hungary, there is there would not be a significant political gain domestically for Babiš. And yes, the big question is the ammunition initiative. And here again, we do not know. Babiš said in the campaign that he would like to stop it, or to put it more precisely, he claimed that NATO should actually be responsible for the ammunition initiative, though it is impossible to transfer it on the NATO level from the practical reasons. And just after the elections, the deputy chairman of ANO, Mr. Havlíček, said that they are not against the ammunition initiative, but they would like to investigate if everything is done with a good transparency, and if the benefits for the defense industry are not way too big. So if there is also some kind of an international pressure on Babiš, I still believe that the Czech Republic will continue with this practical tool, which actually helps Ukraine in the war. So I would perhaps stop here. I have some notes also on the regional cooperation and what kind of options we've got here after the elections, but I can leave it for the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Vitek, for this overview, and I can promise we will come back to the regional perspective, because I think this is one of the most vivid fears now among international partners, whether these election results are really the entry points into a much stronger Visegrad cooperation that once again can form a sort of blocking entity at EU level. But first and foremost, I would like to warmly welcome Andrea Mihalcová, Director of the Center for Informed Society. I am so happy, Andrea, that you can join and be with us. And Petro actually has had a fantastic bon mot today, which was that Russian dots and trolls don't have voting rights yet. And I would be very, very interested in your take as a FIMI expert. How do you see the integrity of these Czech elections from a FIMI perspective? What were the information manipulation strategies you could observe in the campaign? And last but not least, also in a comprehensive way to VTech points, how do you see actually the relationship to Russia and Ukraine shifting potentially under the next Czech government? So welcome, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be with you. So I will start from the FIMI perspective. Of course, there were attempts to influence the electoral process, but it was rather calm. I can say that neither what we've seen in Romania or in Moldova have not been recorded in the Czech Republic. What we've seen, I will mention just few trends before the election. What was the the most popular things in September, actually, because we had a slow campaign during the summer, and the peak was the 4 weeks before the election. So what was reported also publicly was a coordinated network of anonymous TikTok accounts, where the estimate was like the fake accounts in low hundreds to around thousands, with weekly reach in millions, who amplified pro-Kremlin narratives and promoted anti-system movements like the Communist Party, Stachilo, or SPD. But there were no proven links to specific parties. It was really like mutual amplification and cross-posting what occurred. The identification of the operators behind these accounts is rather unknown until yet. It's been investigated. Also, what we've seen was alleged election manipulation of invalidation of results, which was for pro-Russian disinformation. It was shared by pro-Russian outlets. It was frequently spread over headlines and stories, also on social media. That, for example, intelligence services, army, or the EU would manipulate elections, often referencing to the Romanian scenario. For example, these narratives were often linked also to the debate on postal voting, as Czech Republic was for the first time was allowed to vote from abroad by post. This was one topic, but in the end, it didn't have that big reach. And of course, freedom of speech and censorship. Often what we've seen was misinterpretation of EU instruments like Digital Services Act and others, which were broadly labeled as censorship tools. This was done by disinformation outlets, but also through some specific politicians. So this was like generally what we've seen in the information space. Of course, the way how the campaign run was very different from the last elections. Social media was in many parties, number one tool where they presented their ideas, narratives, and so on. So we can really say that the foreign influence haven't influenced that much the elections, the key question now is whether the new government and newly composed parliament will accept this mandate as a commitment to responsibility and strengthening stability and democracy. And of course, we would need a stronger role of civil society and also private sector to maintain, I would say, something what I call civic vigilance and critical engagement in also like a vocal support. For example, what happened also during the election weekend, what might be misguided or misleaded was were some repeated outages and on the first day of voting and the second day of voting, these electronic IDs. Because it was first elections where Czech citizen could use it. And unfortunately, there were some malfunctioning, but we didn't, it was like a technical issue, and institutions said that it wasn't really any foreign attack on the system. The agency, Digital Information Agency, they claimed that it was really only a functionality of the software and high number of users at one time, which was really like a big case. So in terms of, for example, hybrid threats and strategic communication, we've heard from the election winner to reject any regulations and reject fighting disinformation, and they want to dismiss the most visible figures who are responsible for this agenda. We've seen already on Friday the resignation of the government coordinator, Otakar Foltin, under the government office from the position of the coordinator for strategic communication. And we do expect some changes maybe in the institutions, but I would say the Czech institutions are quite resilient. And the people working there, they want to, do the agenda and fight for not freedom of speech, but to continue the work with the worsening of the security environment globally. I would say that it's crucial that we maintain these positions, these departments, these experts on security policy and hybrid threats there. As I mentioned, I see the crucial role of civil society and private sector in terms to watchdog the work of the future government. In terms of support for Ukraine, actually directly after the elections, we've heard, I would say, slightly milder tone of narratives. Even Andrej Babiš or Karel Havlíček, they said that they want to like see the full analysis, how it works. For example, the munition initiative by the Czech government, and they will decide if they will support it or not. But it's not like clear no to support of ammunition to Ukraine and others. They want to do some audits, and we will see actually. So I wouldn't be that pessimistic, but of course we still have to wait who will sit in the crucial ministries like Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Interior, and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Once we know the clear who is there, then we can, we can say better. So I will stop here, and I will wait for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for your insights, and thank you all actually for this highly intriguing conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, please submit your questions via the Q&A function of Zoom. And I would like to start actually with a bunch of questions to you. Of course, I will address them according to the topics, whether it's domestic or foreign policy related. But feel free to cherry pick and answer more actually than were just addressed to you. So first, with regard to the domestic issues, Petra, I think there is a real innovation in some way in Czech politics, and of course, sort of anti-environmentalist conservatism used to have a past and a track record in Czech politics since Klaus actually, and we know that anti-environmentalism over the past years also became a focal point and a critical topic for radical right and far right parties throughout the continent. But as far as I'm aware, and please correct me if I am wrong, it only happened in Czechia that actually a radical right party was established almost exclusively. I know that it's not only they're programmatic, because they are also very much in favor of keeping the Czech koruna as currency, which is anyhow not endangered by any pro-euro introduction attempts. But it's mainly anti-environmentalism, programmatic, and narrative, on the basis of which the motorists for themselves were founded. And here the question, what explains this phenomenon economically, socially, attitudinally, and what can we expect actually from the motorists? And the second, largely unrelated question, obviously we have spoken about the winners of these elections, but we have barely mentioned ODS, the mayors, and the pirates. And here my question, what are your expectations? Will their coordination be upheld, or we will see rather a fragmentation in the opposition camp, these parties distancing from each other and actually practically making a potential future change or the strengthening of the civic central camp in Czechia just more difficult? Vitek, in your paper about the foreign policy scenarios, you had actually a very interesting claim, which was that if there will be a coalition between ANO and the radical right parties, then you said that you would expect the foreign ministry and potentially also defense going to those parties. So we still don't know whether there will be a minority government or a coalition. But my first question is, A, whether you still stick to that analysis and statement, that your expectation is that if there is a coalition, then these ministries and portfolios will go to the minor coalition partners. And second, I know that it's potentially sensitive or tea leaf reading, but for international partners, it would be interesting to know who would be actually the most likely potential candidates who are in some way affiliated with these parties, who can have a chance to be potentially invited to serve as ministers in the incoming government. And Andrea, you mentioned both the change at the head of the Office for Strategic Communication, and also that in your eyes, actually, Czech institutions are very resilient. And it's a matter of fact that potentially Czechia has one of the best developed and strongest anti-disinformation, anti-information manipulation ecosystem, certainly in Central Europe, but I think also that this comparison is valid at EU level. However, we also have seen in the United States and elsewhere that if populist actors nowadays are entering power, then these institutions more often than not end up in their political crosshairs. And based actually on the strategic communication programs, agendas of ANO, SPD, and Motorist, what are your expectations? Will we see potentially political attacks trying to undermine or weaken that strong and resilient ecosystem you mentioned? Or you think that they rather will try to preserve it because they can also serve their political purposes, especially in light of the election results, that the Czech population is not necessarily supporting strategic rethinking of security and foreign policy orientation, that weakening the infrastructure that is defending the Czech society from interferences for Russia and other sources, that can be also a legitimate goal for the incoming power holders. So these would be my questions for the first round, and I don't know whom of you would like to start. Petra.
Okay, thank you. These are difficult questions, so I will. There are two. One is about what are these motorists actually about, and what they want, and what will they do. And the second is about the current governing parties and pirates. How are they going to act in opposition? So starting with the motorists. So in the 90s, we had a very famous prime minister, and he's still not retiring from politics, and that's Václav Klaus. And he was famous in distinguishing between, it was like culture wars before culture wars were a thing. So it was especially anti-global warming, that it doesn't exist. And his famous book was called Blue, Not Green Planet. And so I would say that if motorists are anything in a nutshell, they're Václav Klaus's grandkids or kids. I mean, if it was like a second set of kids after divorce. Mr. Matzinka, the chairman of Motorist, is a long-term speaker of Václav Klaus. They had the first meeting they had on Saturday in a Prague one bar between Mr. Turek, the frontman of the party, the head of the party, and Václav Klaus. So it's kind of Václav Klaus still keeping kind of his finger in Czech politics. Motorists, while they are part of the Patriots group, together with Andrej Babiš, Patriots for Europe, they see themselves as conservatives. But you are conservative in the campaign, and then you see the ministries and the positions that you could have, and you want them. So what we can expect, they made it into the European Parliament last year on opposition to Green Deal. They found a lot of resonance among young males, but also people from working in and around automotive industry, which is a very important thing in the Czech Republic. And I think what's important that they mobilized a lot of people who would otherwise not be interested in politics. And they don't understand politics very much, so they like the performativeness. So I think the performativeness will take place. Mr. Matsinka today went to see the president, who is meeting all the chair people of political parties, and he went in an American kind of jeep. We were wondering what he in a pickup truck. We were wondering what he was hoping to pick up, but I think that's kind of going into the performativeness. But when it comes to power, I mean, they are dealing with a professional. Mr. Babiš is an experienced businessman, experienced negotiator, and I think they will be rather flexible on many things. I think what we are hearing now and what is a lot in the media, it's kind of this, they're high on the victory, they made it in the parliament, the surveys were saying they will not. So I think they will be flexible. One of their flagship agendas was a balanced budget, and they said, well, we didn't mean it exactly immediately. So you see like big promises before election are something else when you are seeking power. So this about motorists. And also one more thing, and that is that like other Central and Eastern European countries, Czech Republic is receiving large EU structural funds for reinvigoration, for environmental causes, especially in these peripheral regions. So the Ministry of Environment is actually one of the largest redistributor of EU funds. That also has to do a lot with energy, because, for example, if it wouldn't be for these funds that were used for insulation of the old panel houses, the energy crisis would have hit Czech Republic much harder. So there is a lot of funds. Motorists also have donors which have interests in these areas, but Mr. Babiš also has business interest in these areas. So I think we shall see. But we are having a party with almost 7% against a party with 35%, experienced politician, inexperienced politician. So that will be an interesting dynamic to watch. And as for the losers, well, I mean, they got the same percentage of votes and same number of votes. So with Václav Klaus, I would call it a non-victory. Rather than a loss. This has been a coalition which Prime Minister Fiala has managed to hold together almost, with the Pirates, I think, benefiting from leaving or being kicked out, depending who you ask. So I think the biggest question for me is the continuation of the three-way coalition together, Spolu. We have seen that this has been a great gift for the Christian Democrats, which have benefited greatly. We see a lot of internal leadership struggle in Top 09. It's a virtually non-existing party, so actually 9 seats for them is more than they could hope for alone. So I think we can see some realignment there. I think they will cooperate where they can cooperate, and they will compete when it comes time to compete. But I think each of these 5 parties caters to different voters. What I also see ahead is some issues in Stan. I think the Pirates has used the last 4 years, and especially the last year when almost everybody gave up on them, quite well. They have defined themselves as a liberal party with let's say social consciousness, which is kind of has a appeal. Like, if there is something left as a liberal left in Czech Republic that is liberal on identity and kind of has some social consciousness and is for redistribution, so for policies that are for all but non-populist, then Pirates are catering to this. And I think that together they have the potential to have some plan, but that must include the social dimension. The social dimension missing in Mr. Fiala's government, or let's say just sitting in the corner, marginalized. I think that was a big failure. So they have to find these voters, appeal to them, and 2 of the 5 parties, the Christian Democrats, they are also on economy, more redistributive, more socially conscious, and Pirates more for the liberal city voters. So they have the potential to divide these outreach to these electorates, while also making clear that they will work together, which they also did this time. So I think non-victory. They will have fun in opposition. I'm especially going to look at the Pirates group. There will be 15 female Pirate MPs and 3 males. So that's going to be a completely new, and I think a lot of social conservatives will struggle with the female pirates.
Thank you so much, Petra. Just allow me one follow-up question. I know that it's a minor issue, but actually both the far-left Stachilo and SPD performed weakly in comparison to the survey polling data, while actually the motorists arrived pretty much there where they were measured. And the question is, was that actually just a polling failure? Or we can state that while there was a significant voter migration from the far left and SPD to ANO, actually the core electoral basis of the motorist, for whatever reason, appeared to be very resilient to that voter migration. And here my question would be, was that a polling error, or we see that actually that voters of SPD and motorists are behaving differently, and while SPD voters could be successfully attracted by ANO, apologies, the voters of motorists were resilient to that attraction, and if yes, why?
Okay, so thank you for this. So I think Mr. Babiš's last minute. So what I want to say in defense of the polling agencies is that Czech voters are known to actually decide last minute. About half of the voters of Pirates and mayors have actually said they only decided on the day of the elections. So I don't know if this is a world specialty, but that's how it works in Czech Republic. So it's impossible to measure. We have also seen last minute. So usually the last minute realignment benefits the larger parties. So this also benefited Spolu, and it has definitely benefited ANO. And I think for Mr. Babiš, his last minute pitch to the voters was, you know me, I deliver. We are in the EU, in NATO, but I will take care of you. And this has turned out to have a much stronger appeal. As for the motorists, I think we know very little yet about the party, but I would not classify them as extreme right or radical right, and their electorate is kind of from everybody. And why are they more stable? Well, because they are mostly voting for Filip Turek, for the frontman of the party, who in his post-election humble brag said that in Czech Republic, the preferential votes are circles. And Filip Turek said that a lot of female voters were making little hearts for him. I think also a lot of male voters were making little hearts for him instead of a circle. What I want to say is that they cannot move to other parties because they don't have Filip Turek. The car as both a status symbol, but also as a necessity. I would like to remind voters not from big cities actually, that elsewhere in the country the public transport is nowhere close to Prague and anywhere else. So car is a necessity, fearing that perhaps they will not be able to use diesel, etc., not being so open, having doubts about electromobility and so on, and not being able to afford electromobility. So these are real concerns, but also it's a young party which just likes Filip Turek. He's cool. It's kind of how I would say it's similar relationship many Italian men had with Silvio Berlusconi. Like they tolerated his transgressions and everything because they saw if they were in his position, they would act the same way. So this is like kind of a cult of personality party, and they just love Filip Turek because they want to be him.
Thank you so much. Andrea, Vitek, whom of you would like to continue?
May follow on with your question and would continue exactly where Petra stopped, because what the leaks say right now on the negotiations about the possible next government is that Filip Turek is discussed as a possible nominee for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and that it is the preferred option for the motorists. If that they would like to be part of the government, they would like to have Filip Turek as the minister. But still, their expectations are quite high. They would like to have also the Ministry of the Environment and Ministry of the Health care. Well, this was already refused by Babiš himself, that he would like to have his own person for the ministry, for that ministry. So another position as a Minister of Social Affairs is also discussed for another personality, Mr. Šťastný, who is the former ODS member and part of this success of the motorists, definitely, for another ministerial office for him. But still, Filip Turek as the Minister of Foreign Affairs would be quite something, because as Petra described him already, it's hard to imagine someone like him in the ministry with the legacy of Karel Schwarzenberg as one of the former ministers. Because and the big question is if something like that would be acceptable for Andrej Babiš himself. For Andrej Babiš, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is not very important. He believes that it's him up here to deal with the foreign policy, that it is decided in his head and in his office. I believe that he would like to keep the new position of the National Security Advisor, who was a very important political figure in Petr Fiala's government or the cabinet, though the current outgoing National Security Advisor was also sometimes nicknamed as the best minister of the Fiala's government, though he wasn't a minister at all. So it became quite a significant figure in the system, very much connected, which is also very much connected with the personality of who is in this position. So this definitely will be an important figure for Babiš himself. Same as the Sherpa for EU affairs. In Fiala's government, it was the same person, but under Andrej Babiš, it might be two different personalities, because he would also like to get rid of the Minister for European Affairs, which was there in the Fiala's government. Yes, so those people around Babiš will be important for him and will frame the foreign policy in order to perhaps leave the ministry to do some symbolic actions and symbolic activities, which would result in kind of in a way a Slovak case where you have Mr. Blanar to do the symbolic diplomacy, but the decisions are taken under the auspices of Mr. Fico. And still, this is not the preferred option for Babiš. We may hear, that the SPD and the motorists right now, they demand quite a lot. But as Petra also explained, they are not the experienced the ones in the negotiations, and Babiš may just refute their demands and claim that that this is the area where I would like to take and keep the control. And in that case, Babiš would like to rather have some experienced diplomat for the position of the minister, someone who would follow the orders coming from him, but on the other hand, someone who would be able to open the doors and who would not get lost in the long corridors of the Černý Palais, where is the seat of the Czech Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you so much, Vítek. Andrea?
Yeah, thank you. I would just briefly follow up on what Vítek said, that National Security Advisor was a crucial role. It is also a crucial role in the FIMI agenda, but unfortunately, in this agenda, he hasn't done much in the former, government. So in that term, maybe we won't see that many changes. But back to you, Daniel, and what you asked regarding the resilience in institutions, I would say that institutions are that resilient as people working in there. And I have to say, I see that that people inside the Czech institutions, they struggled already under government of Babiš and others, and we have people there working on this agenda 10 plus years, and they are still willing to stay, even the departments will be cancelled or renamed or moved somewhere. They do see the crucial role into the agenda, and also, of course, the know-how and the know-how of the institution that they see crucial to keep it, So, but of course, there are on the table still many scenarios that everything will be cancelled. It can happen, of course, as we saw that in Slovakia, Hungary, United States, this is now very popular to cancel this kind of departments and everything what is related to censorship and freedom of speech. So the scenarios, what we see is also I don't know, any financial restrictions, personal eliminations, or politicization of the government communication. We could see one option is that we will see the shift in communication priorities, or the worst case scenario is misuse of the government communication for propaganda and manipulation. This is exactly doing the Slovak Prime Minister, and he used all of these departments across the ministries and the government office for his propaganda. I have to say that there is, in a way, also lack of expertise in ANO party on the terms of security, in terms of FIMI and hybrid threats, because they perceive security through, the cybersecurity mainly, in a way, a little bit AI, and mostly the economic security. So I see an opportunity, again, what I mentioned previously, civil society and the private sector. trying to explain that it's important nowadays to have this kind of agenda, and that it doesn't matter what we will call it, if we have Stratcom or something else. But the thing is that has to be really there, because what this government might experience is the biggest crisis, from the Second World War we might have in Europe. So they would need to strengthen the communication and the relationships between the citizen and the state. And for this, you need the crisis communication departments and Stratcom departments, even you can call it in any way. What I wanted to say also is that I see the role of international institutions very crucial, that they can play a role, and also, checks in these institutions can have a crucial role to make awareness what is happening, to push some narratives, or to push towards some actions of the Czech government to stay in line with EU and NATO plans in terms of this agenda. And of course, NGOs can play again a crucial role in the watchdogging of the institutions, monitoring of incidents, and we also need to find new ways of communication, and to put some other actors into the resilience sphere to follow the whole of society approach. For example, influencers, new media, and so on. So I don't see it as a loss, even in the worst case scenario. Of course, we will have a lot of work, but again, here I see really the crucial role of the private sector and civil society to to push and make vocal this agenda also.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I think we could close actually the conversation with an identical question to all three of you. And it is a case when we see a not so surprising overlap actually between international media reporting and Hungarian government propaganda. Because very often the fears of international partners are identical than the highest hopes of Hungarian government circles, and it is that actually Andrej Babiš re-entering power in actually the formats that are considered to be the most likely can be the start of a new heydays of Central European cooperation, potentially in a form that can obstruct or block EU policymaking. I fully understand that most of the arguments that were mentioned by you, and particularly Vitek, are countering these narratives, but still there are some facts. This will be the first time that there will be two prime ministers in the European Council from the ranks of the radical right Patriots group. It's a matter of fact that even though we know that there is no 100% ideological alignment from the part of Babiš and Ano with that mindset, he and Ano is still a founding member of the Patriots. And here I just would like to ask you to share our views and potentially correct this fierce misinterpretation or Hungarian government propaganda. What can international partners really expect in that regard? Will there be a new realignment? If there will be, what will be the shape of that realignment? Where are potentially joint interest? and where can we say that, yes, there might be some joint communication and symbolic cooperation, but actually behaving that way is certainly not in the interest of the Czech government or on Andrej Babiš. And I only dare to ask this question because you already used several times the Slovakia comparison. We know that Andrej Babiš is not Viktor Orbán. We know that Andrej Babiš is not Robert Fico. We also know that Robert Fico is not Viktor Orbán. So very often this simplification is not really helpful. But we also know that actually just a couple of weeks ago, Smer, so the Slovak governing party of Robert Fico, was just expelled from the ranks of the European Socialists and Democrats. Do you think, or can you imagine that actually a rather strong cooperation between Budapest and Prague in the framework of the Patriots group can have enough gravitas to attract actually also the Slovak governing party in this, for that new political home? So this would be the first group of questions, I would say. And the second, very simply, to help foreign partners and observers to navigate actually the nitty-gritties of Czech politics. What are the most important what-to-watches and pivotal points that can be instructive in the coming weeks and months to understand in which direction Czech domestic and foreign policy will develop? So if you could shed light on such pivotal points, that I think that would be very, very helpful. Over to you.
Okay, so to our European partners fearing some kind of a illiberal Central European, among the weirdos that choose to be behind the Iron Curtain, I would say, leave the Iron Curtain in your mind and fear less and call Andrej Babiš more. It takes two to tango. And what we know is that the Eastern European or Central European leaders, I mean, you need two people if you have a phone call, there needs to be somebody on the other side. And we have seen successful cases of moderating and cooperation with leaders that have much more extreme position on some issues than Mr. Babiš, and that is the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. So I see also, I would call with a gently yet firmly our partners on their hypocrisy. Why are the boogeymen always, why are the monsters always from Central Europe? I think if Mr. Babiš is something, he's a pragmatic businessman with interests across the whole EU. There's a lot of business interest in Hungary, in Slovakia, but it really depends if there is going to be somebody, and we have seen it by Ursula von der Leyen during her first commission, kind of Mr. Fiala and Mr. Morawiecki, then prime ministers of Czech Republic and Poland respectively, embracing and keeping Giorgia Meloni in the European mainstream on the EPP side. So we know that it can be done. So I think choose among yourself who is going to be the phone friend of Andrej Babiš. I think he would prefer Emmanuel Macron, although I assume Emmanuel Macron has kind of a lot of issues on his hand with the latest resignation. So that would be on the first question, Danny. And on the second, what to watch for? Watch for Mr. Babiš actually resolving his conflict of interest. So whether he is actually going to get from the President Pavel the right to form a government. Don't be mistaken, Mr. Babiš is also not afraid of strategic failure. The first government he's going to form can be just to gain more time because the clock will be ticking. So it's like don't look for black and white. Mr. Babiš knows how to operate very well. The scenario we are looking at now doesn't have to be the final scenarios. Things can be fluid, negotiations can be had both within factions of the current governing parties or actually all of them. So I think there is a lot to watch. watch how, whether or not the parliament will actually give Mr. Babiš and Mr. Okamura lift their immunity for prosecution. That is something that is binding them together. But I think just look at the Czech Republic as a fluid politics that is, however, still firmly on a rational side of a man. You don't become a billionaire because you are not shrewd and you are not good in negotiation. And that, I think, is really, really important. So it's going to be a rational politics where interests of Mr. Babiš and his economic interests are going to guide him in enjoying the most important moment of his career and this victory he has achieved. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Vitek?
Yeah, with this revival of Central European cooperation, we will see a lot of symbolism when it comes to this end of the Czech foreign policy. The first international visit of the new prime minister, most probably Andrej Babiš, will be to Bratislava, to Slovakia, and it will be a big hug between Babiš and Fico. They will announce that they restart the government-to-government meetings that were interrupted by Petr Fiala for the positions of Robert Fico vis-a-vis Russia and Ukraine, but also for the fact that Robert Fico bowed in front of the grave of Gustav Husak, the former communist president and the symbol of the normalization of 1970s and 1980s, which was quite hard for Petr Fiala, a guy who spent his early career as a part of the dissident movement. It was hard to digest for him, and also there were some political motivations within the party at the time. But Babiš will and Fico, they will announce that they will restart the government to government meetings. But what can they achieve together? It will be again rather a symbolic act. I still think that many ministers of the next Babiš government, when they will travel for this meeting with their Slovak partners, they will have to first Google out and figure out who is actually their partner for the meeting. They don't know them. So I would not overestimate, this symbolism, and it's similar with Hungary. Though I believe that Orbán would have something in his mind how to use, this relationship for perhaps for the domestic political purposes. And there is one thing, which I'm a little bit afraid of. Babiš has very little connections to the current U.S. administration. He was even invited for the inauguration of Donald Trump, but he did not arrive. And there was this idea that when he is in the DC that he might get connected with some people. So to learn what is the difference between Trump 1 and Trump 2. It did not happen, and as he has a little connections to the US and to the whole MAGA movement, there might be some volunteer, to provide him with these connections in Central Europe, which might be quite a bad signal. What to do? That's perhaps the task for the Western European partners here. Babiš would like to get befriended, with the partners in other European capitals. I can imagine that a working relationship with Friedrich Merz might be set up quite easily. Czechia is Germany is still for Czechia the main business partner. So yeah, there are the ways how to make Babiš more like Meloni and less like Orbán.
Thank you, Andrej.
Thank you. I fully agree what my colleagues said, and I would add just look at the numbers. Andrej Babiš is owner of holding Agrofert, who is benefiting from EU subsidies. So this is also like a strong, I would say, component how to look over Andrej Babiš. And he's not Robert Fico, for sure. Robert Fico is more, he believes that communist ideology. Andrej Babiš doesn't. So he's really more pragmatic. I agree what Vitek said, that we will see a lot of symbolism, a lot of vocal narratives, but Babiš will be, I would say, very careful with some pro-Russian statements, and to repeat some, very careful in repeating some pro-Russian narratives because of his pro-EU interest, of course. So this would be very different, I would say, from the Slovakian case. And yeah, still we will see the final results in how the government will look like. But what we will see on social media, it really doesn't mean that there will be like a big shift. Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers in support of Ukraine and other data. So that would be crucial to really look at the data and the real outcomes, not the proclamation on the social media.
Thank you so much. Actually, on my end, I could continue this conversation for hours. And I hope that we will have the opportunity to do so soon. But I fear that because we are approaching the end of our webinar, now I need to say thank you actually for this very insightful and very informative conversation. Andrea, Petra, Vitek, thank you for offering your insights and for taking the time to be here. And actually, if you allow me just to formulate one takeaway for our international partners, then aside of the many information we received, is just one point that actually taking the worst case scenario is not so instructive in the case of Czechia if you would like to predict what's next. And I just would like to echo the point all of you made. If Western partners would like to avoid the scenario of Central and Eastern European populists coming together into a blocking conglomerate at EU level, then potentially this is the time to reach out early and instead of responding with reservations to the Czech election results, respond in a proactive way. And I think this is a very valuable takeaway partners can take with from this conversation. So thank you all. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today, and I hope that we can welcome you in our next GMF webinar. Have a wonderful day and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.